Hi, everyone. We're just going to give a moment to everyone to connect, for everyone to connect. And so our numbers are going up as everybody is eager for our 16th day of our series of monthly webinars. And we're really happy to have everyone. And it's a nice cloudy day here in New York City, a little chilly, 39 degrees. I hope it's warmer wherever you may be. And all right, I think we're all here. Okay, so today I'm going to be demonstrating how to perform MLD if you have lymphedema in one leg, and also if you have MLD in both legs. I'm not going to necessarily show the whole thing, like where, for example, I'm not going to show the abdominal portion just because, you know, over there we have some contraindications that I want to make sure that you always speak about with your therapist. But actually, you know, allow me to make that disclaimer now, that, you know, all of our webinars this month, you know, it's intended to be resources for you, and it's meant to inspire you to basically take your self-care management, self-care activities and tasks to the next level, you know, inspire you to actually do it more frequently, as often as, you know, recommended. But it is not by any means a replacement for the professional interventions and the professional lymphedema therapy that you should be receiving from your healthcare team. You need to have everything cleared by your medical team, and everything that you are educated on in terms of your self-care tasks should have come from your lymphedema therapists. So please do keep that in mind. And then also, we're pleased to welcome at the end a sponsored portion of our webinar today, and it's by Tuan. And we're going to be welcoming Ryan Hansen, and he'll be talking about some of the products that are intended for lymphedema from his company. But before we get started at all, I'd like to introduce you to my team. And my team, if you can please come onto the scene, let me introduce you to the world here. On the top there, we have Alyssa Fiorito. She's the NLN Garment Program Manager. So she takes care of all the applications that come through from our NLN members. Below her, we have Erin Sokolsky. She is our marketing manager. And for those of you who may have received our email blast last night about our grand opening of our store, that was all her. Thank you so much, Erin. And then we also have, but aren't available on video, Jennifer Williams. She's our continuing education manager. We have Nicole Ballard, who is our membership manager, Christy Blair, who is our project manager, and Veronica Senares, who is our social media manager. And that is the team. And should any of the board members make it onto the scene tonight, I'll definitely introduce you to them. All right. So Alyssa, you know, before you go off, you know, Fenton, you know, the radiographer from yesterday, Fenton and I want to know what was for dinner.
Well, it was a HelloFresh kit dinner, and it was pasta. It was ravioli.
Sounds delicious. All right, very cool. Okay, cool. So Alyssa will be managing the Q&A today. Christy will be joining us shortly, and she'll be managing the chat. And so with that, I'm going to get started. And the way that I'd like to get started is to show you a few things in terms of a drawing of the lymphatic system. And I'll try my best to do everything justice. But let's just draw first, you know, the body. So I'm going to be doing it in my orientation only because I don't know how to do everything upside down, so I'll turn it around for you afterwards, okay? But, so, you know, the head, the neck, the arms. Oh, that was a terrible arm, but that's okay. You get the idea. And then the hips, whoopsie. Okay, you get the idea. And the legs. Okay, so the main thing that I would like to show you is that essentially the way that the lymphatic system is divided in the body is pretty much into quarters, right? So let me get a pink here. But from the top of the head, all the way down the chest through to the genitals, even the genitals are divided in half. So if you have genital lymphedema, you massage the right to the right, the left to the left. And then also we have like over here, if this is our belly button, right? So basically the entire body is divided into quarters. And the way that drainage occurs is such that basically everything in this upper left quadrant goes into the lymph nodes in your armpit and or the lymph nodes in your neck, right? Eventually, the entire lymphatic system drains everything into the neck. So that's important to note too. But the upper right quadrant eventually goes and drains into the lymph nodes in your right armpit and or your right neck. Down here in the lower part of the body, everything in the left lower quadrant drains into the lymph nodes in your left groin. Everything in your right lower quadrant drains into the right groin. Okay. And then from there, so like, I want to focus on the legs for a second. So at some point in time, all the fluid that is made from your toes and your feet and your ankles, lower legs, knees, and thighs eventually drain into the lymph nodes in your groin. It goes into the pelvic lymph nodes and then it goes up, right? And something that I had shared with everyone when we were talking about the arms is that it's just really interesting that, you know, the lymphatic system was very intelligent in terms of how it designed itself, in terms of where it's going to be situated and where it's going to be, you know, congregated in large quantities. So what I mean by that is that the lymph nodes in the groin here, they're like in the front, you know, of your groin, right in the center of your groin. So that if this is where you bend, then it's situated right in the center. Now, like, what is the advantage of being situated there? Well, basically, you know, you're not going to crush it. You're not, like, it's not like if you sat on it and it was on the other side of you and you put all your body's weight when you sit down, it's not going to be crushed if it was over, you know, as if it was going to be over there. So over here, when you sit down, it's just basically protected by all the soft tissue surrounding it. And then when you sit down, it basically, you know, has like a nice deep concavity that protects it further. So that's pretty cool. And, you know, sometimes I really think that nature just designed the body so that it was intended for manual lymphatic drainage. And this is what I mean. So I'm going off on a tangent, but I'll get back to my point. But this is what I mean. So if it's like right here in the middle of the groin, in the middle of the, you know, the inguinal crease, well, basically the way that there is a drainage, potential alternate drainage pathway is such that it connects from here in the center up into the axilla, right? So, and over here from the center up into the axilla. Now, under normal circumstances, like I said in the beginning, everything in this left lower quadrant drains into the groin over here. Everything in this right lower quadrant drains into the groin over here. From there, the normal pathway is such that, let me get a different color here. I'm going to make it blue. From there, under normal circumstances, it drains, everything from that groin drains here, and everything from this groin drains here. And then basically you have the thoracic duct, which is the largest lymph vessel in the body, and it comes up through the thorax, and then everything drains into the venous angle right over here into these group of lymph nodes. So that's the normal pathway for the lymphatic drainage from your legs, right? But now, if you have damage to these lymph nodes, whether it's inguinal lymph nodes or pelvic lymph nodes up a little higher, then, you know, that's where there is going to be a challenge for all the lymphatic fluid that's created in your legs and in your genital region and your lower abdominal region to drain. So, you know, that's where lymphedema comes in. And so when your therapist teaches you manual lymphatic drainage, we have to find the alternate routes so that, you know, we can take advantage of the parts of your lymphatic system that are working just fine. And that would be the lymph nodes in your armpits up here. So when you have lymphedema in one leg, the drainage will be such that definitely you bring it up into that same-sided armpit. But the thing is that it depends on the reason why your lymph nodes were removed. So for example, if you had a history of, let's say, skin cancer, like let's say melanoma or squamous cell carcinoma, and it was like on this like left leg here. And so maybe the doctor was concerned and that maybe there was a metastasis to the groin, or they simply removed it just to check for metastasis, or they removed it for preventative measures. Well, then in that case, you really only have to be concerned about lymphedema risk on this one leg. And technically speaking, you still have the opposite side as an alternate route. And you have, of course, the armpit as an alternate route as well. However, if let's say you have lymphedema in one leg, let's continue to say it's the left leg. But basically it is from let's say from ovarian cancer or prostate cancer, and so lymph nodes were removed. Usually, like there's a pelvic lymph node dissection that's performed, in which case that means that all the lymph nodes over here have been compromised. And even if you only have lymphedema or lymphedema risk in one leg, we really don't have the opposite side as an alternate route. So really what we want to make sure that we do is that we only bring the fluid up into the same-sided armpit because we know for sure that that's intact and that's working just fine. So that's definitely something for you to understand and keep in mind. But again, all of this you should have already had the education from your lymphedema therapist. And I just hope that maybe this picture helps to remind you and, so that you can understand, because whenever you have a deeper understanding of something, that always kind of inspires you to be more diligent with things, right? Okay, so going back to what I wanted to start to say was, it's very interesting, as I explained with the upper extremity, that the body just kind of knows like where it can be best protected, right? In terms of the lymphatic system. So over here, on the inside of our legs, we actually have many, many more lymphatic vessels, right, than on the outside. And it's not that we don't, because we have lymphatic vessels everywhere, right? Because drainage is occurring everywhere. But why do I tell you this? I tell you this for two reasons. The first is, as you might have seen, like if you have had lymphedema that's progressed to like a later stage, like to the point of like, let's say elephantiasis, or you just have like stage 2 and, it's more significant, when that fluid starts to back up, it's going to back up along the lymphatic system. And over here in the legs, it's on the inner side of the legs. So sometimes you'll see that you'll have like lobules, right? You'll have like pockets of tissue and extra swelling here that will just kind of gather here. Well, the reason why that's gathering here on the inside is because you have so many more lymph vessels on the inner part of your leg. So if you were to liken it to a traffic analogy, which is what I often do, if you have a roadway and it's like a highway and you have great, fields of grass on either side, if there is a traffic jam, it's not going to happen in the fields of grass. It's going to happen along the roads, right? Where the cars will be, traveling through. So it's kind of the same thing. This is the reason why you'll start to see the lobules, because that's just where the roads are. That's where the lymphatic vessels are in greater numbers. And so, so that's the first reason. It's just to let you know that, if you see a progression of your lymphedema, most likely you'll be first to notice it on the inside. Secondly, the reason why I say this is because, if, let's just say for some reason, you don't have time to do the entire sequence, of your self-MLD, if you can just always at least make sure that you have paid attention along the inner aspect of your legs, you will have done, more work than if you only paid attention to the outer part of your leg. And so that's the point with that. And that's that. So
Jeanette,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Somebody just typed a question that I just wanted you to be able, that's relevant to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What happens if you have some lymph nodes removed from the left armpit due to breast cancer surgery and you have left leg lymphedema? Where would you direct the fluid then?
Okay, so that's a good question. But now, is the left leg lymphedema, like, it depends on what the origin or the cause of the left leg lymphedema is. Were their lymph nodes removed, or is it more from like a venous, etiology? So that makes all the difference. So, but I'm just gonna take the scenario that, let's just say it is, let's say a woman who had bilateral mastectomy with bilateral lymph nodes removed from the armpits. And then unfortunately, she also had pelvic lymph nodes removed because she also subsequently developed ovarian cancer. In those situations, the best thing to do then is to treat the entire lymphatic system as if it was an intact lymphatic system. And we just encourage it under to try to drain under normal pathways, but we just kind of really give it a lot of extra help. So we would bring the arm in, the right arm into the right armpit, the left arm into the left armpit, right leg into the left, right leg into the right groin, left leg into the left groin. And then you just encourage it to go, like, a lot of diaphragmatic breathing. Definitely what's most important in those cases is a lot of abdominal work, because we want to create a strong central suction, so that it goes up the thoracic duct and back into the venous angles over here. So that's how you would navigate that. Is there another question, Alyssa?
Nope, that was it. Thank you very much.
All right, cool. So what I'm going to first show you is lymphatic drainage. And let's say, since we've been doing the left leg, let's say it is the circumstance where it is the patient who had lymph nodes only removed from the left groin, and still has everything intact on the right groin, and also assuming that everything is intact in the armpits as well. So, this is very simple in the sense that all you have to remember, right, is that it's going to, we want to drain things in the direction where there is no compromise. So we are going to bring it up the leg and then across to the other groin, and then all the way up to the armpit as well. All right. So that's what I'll show you now. And let me just show you one more thing, right? So just because I think sometimes this might help. If you again think of this square as, the body divided into quadrants. Well, if this is the square that's having a hard time, like let's say we were filling it with water, well, then we're just gonna simply bring it over to the adjacent quadrants that are working just fine, right? So that's what we're doing. Okay, but one more thing before I actually demonstrate is, let's continue with that analogy of traffic, right? So let's say this is our highway, right? And let's say, trying to keep in line with the body here, and let's say this is the exit off of the highway, right? And let's say, right here, similar to down here, similar to where there would potentially be an accident, right? Let's say there's a car accident. Let's just write crash right here. It's a little upside down for you, but that's where the crash happened, right? So, we have all these cars. Let's do green cars to represent the lymphatic system. So we have all these cars. all right? And again, this is where the traffic would be. And similarly, where on the road, in the case of a car crash, there's like a slowing down because everybody's so curious to take a look at the scene, right? But the moment that they get past it, there's actually, you can just zoom right by, but everybody just kind of like, slows down to look at everything. But here's the exit, which is like, I guess, similar to this pathway up here into the armpit where it's working just fine. So over here, traffic flows very nicely. But over here, traffic is like, starting to back up. But where is it that traffic is totally at a standstill, right? It is basically down here by the foot, right? Where it's like bumper to bumper, right? Like these cars down here all the way by the foot have to wait for all the cars by the calf to move out. And all those cars have to wait for all of the thigh cars to move out. And so what I'm trying to say here is that you'll see that when you start to first notice lymphedema, it's going to be in the areas that's farthest away from where lymph nodes were removed, right? So if that's your groin here, you'll start to see it by your foot and or ankle first. But I say foot and or ankle because it really depends on the footwear that you have. A lot of people have good compression with the types of shoes that they wear. Like let's say they wear sneakers and it's snugly fitting. So where it actually starts to accumulate is above the footwear, which is by the ankles. And that's the reason why I don't always put too much stock in the stemmer sign. The stemmer sign is this. It's like when you try to pinch your skin, and if you can tent it, that's a negative stemmer sign. But if your skin is so engorged with fluid, then you can't pull that tissue together and you won't see that tenting that you can kind of see right there. You won't see this because all the fluid has taken up all the slack from the skin, and that's considered to be a positive stemmer sign. But, I think that it's a good test to incorporate into an exam, because if it was positive in the beginning and then it becomes negative, well, that's a sign of improvement. But it is definitely not a reliable diagnostic tool because you can often have false negatives. Okay, so that's that. Let's see what else to explain. I think that's it. I hope that was clear. And if anything is confusing, please let me know. And I'm happy to clarify. Okay, so let me show you. Put this down. Okay. And let me just clear out all my markers here. And then we can get started. Okay. So, you know what? Actually, let me show you the neck first, right? Because that's pretty important. And just don't want my markers to dry out because they're alcohol based. They produce like nice color and everything, but that also means that they dry out so quickly. Okay, so like I said, all the drainage in the entire body, the head, the neck, the arms, the abdomen, the genital, the legs, eventually go back into the venous system over here at the neck. And the venous angle is basically comprised of the internal jugular vein, which is basically just a major vein here in the neck, and also the subclavian vein, which is basically just another major vein here in the neck, except it's a little bit more oriented this way along the clavicle. And then, connected into here are a whole bunch of lymph nodes with the lymphatic vessels. So again, this side here, the left side, drains 75% of the body. The left head and neck, left arm, left torso, left leg. This side drains basically just the right head and neck and the right arm and the right upper chest and back. Okay, so just like let's say you had a slow or clogged or fully stopped bathtub. If you take care of the drain, you're already going to accomplish so much, right? The rest of the fluid will just follow. So it's always important to give a little love and attention over here to the neck. So again, it's like right over here, if you look at the profile of your neck, and here's your collarbone. And then you're going to basically allow your hands just to rest right on top. And, you know, we're not massaging the clavicle here. We're not massaging that bone because it's bone. We're actually trying to get to the venous angle, which is about 2 inches below the clavicle. And so then you might ask, why not just do it here? Well, you have a lot of muscles there and you have your rib cage there. So you're not going to get to it from there. So if you go on the top here and you just apply gentle pressure with your fingers, because that's the only parts that are going to basically be able to affect a change above the clavicle, then you can actually put enough pressure here to gently encourage all of the lymphatic system here to like empty into the venous angle. And so, you know, obviously I'm showing this to you sitting up, you know, and I'm doing all these, you know, funny positions just so I can, you know, be accessible to you in the camera. But at home, you'd like to make sure that you're totally supported, you're totally comfortable. And like, even when you're doing this here, when you're doing this movement here, you know, you're somewhat reclined, you have your arms kind of propped up on pillows so that you're not going to get tired, because energy conservation is pretty important when you're doing this, because if you do this in a position where you're taking up a lot of energy, you're going to feel so tired at the end and you're going to say it's too much work, and then you won't want to do it. So you want to make this as easy as possible and conserve as much of your energy as possible while you're doing this. Okay, so you're in a comfortable position, your arms are propped up, and over here, basically you're going to just add a little bit of pressure going into the neck. But when I say the neck, it's not over here, right? Because the neck proper is like from the ears down over here. And over here, you have like the carotid arteries, which if you were to stimulate that by accident, will totally give you like this, you know, decreased blood pressure. It's called a vasovagal response. And you definitely don't want to do that. So even when you're focused over here, you want to make sure you're not accidentally kind of like lingering here on the neck, right? Sometimes like the thumb might be kind of like just hanging out over the carotids. So you want to stay totally clear of the neck proper, right? And the only thing that you're working on is the venous angle right over here. And so you're going to just do very gentle motions where it's kind of like a C, where you add pressure and then you relax. Add pressure and relax. And, you know, it's said that 5 to 7 repetitions is the minimum that you need to do in order to be effective with MLD in an area. But that's, you know, I say round it up to 10, and I say that that's the absolute minimum. But if you have more time to dedicate to your MLD, then by all means, let's do more. Like, let's spend a full minute here, which will mean more than, you know, 5 to 7 repetitions, because it's so effective. This is like the drain for the lymphatic system, right? Okay, so you'll do this for, you know, let's just say 10 for our purposes so that we can get through the demonstration. And then after that, you're going to work your way down so that you are preparing the pathway for drainage. So that's what I wanted to show you actually also. So over here. Okay. So we just did the left neck, right? Okay. But if we were taking that traffic analogy, right? You can't very well push all these cars. Like, in other words, you can't just start from the foot and push all these cars all at once to go up. You actually have to get this car out of the way first, right? And this is where traffic is flowing just fine, right? Over here in the upper quadrant, traffic is flowing just fine. But nonetheless, you're going to prepare and have as much space and as much flow as possible. So let's get rid of that car. And so that's why we're going to work our way down. Now, this is an important point because this is something that gets people confused all the time, right? And so you're going to start over here, work your way down to your foot. But the direction of drainage is, as you can see with these arrows, is always up. But you have to start up here because you have to create a pathway. So really it's like you drain up, you go a little bit further down to take care of this whole quadrant, you drain up. And then over here by the belly button, this is where traffic is normally going in opposite directions, right? Normally everything in this quadrant is going up, and it still is. And normally down here in this quadrant is going down into this groin. But now this is where we start to say, hey, traffic, I know you usually go down, but I'm telling you, there's a traffic jam down there. And I'm telling you that there's an alternate way to, get out of this area, and it's going up. So you're gonna go up and up and up and up and up and up, right? So basically you work your way down to the foot, but you are always going in the direction of drainage, which is in this case all the way up to the armpit, and at the groin the alternate way is also across to the other groin. So okay, so I'm not going to show my face as much anymore. So we did the neck, right? And this is my left side. So basically the next thing will be the armpit, right? So you're in the armpit, and so when you're doing the armpit, you don't want it to be like completely up above your head, because then it's like the muscles will kind of just like take up the space. You want to have a nice gentle, angle to your arm so that you can kind of get in there and you can get deep into the lymph nodes. And so the next thing is your armpit, which is draining just fine. Lymph drainage is 100% here, but hey, like, why not clear it out some more so that there's even more space? And it's kind of like, hey, we're about to give you some more work, so please get rid of your current workload so that we can give you more work, right? And so you want to get into the armpit there. You have lymph nodes basically, kind of on the arm, in the armpit, right where, you have the crease, and a little bit down on your rib cage as well. So you want to basically just get in there and massage the whole area. Now, forgive me, I said massage by accident. Typically, lymphedema therapists do not like to confuse that with manual lymphatic drainage. So allow me to take that back. And so you're gonna clear the lymph nodes over here in this area with at least 10 repetitions, right? Okay, so now we did the main drain, we did these lymph nodes, which were working just fine. And then we're gonna now go and basically work over the entire area above the belly button, right? So if this is my belly button here, so I go to the side and I drain upward, right? So I'm going to allow my hand to totally contour to my body, and I'm going to pull all that skin upward into the armpit, right? And don't be afraid to, like, if you're a woman, to include the breast. Drainage can happen there too. It does happen there. So right up into the armpit. And you do this at least 10 times, right? At all times, you want to maximize the workload by having your hand totally conforming to whatever body part you're over. You want to be like water. So don't force it. Like, you can't have a stiff hand because I'm not this flat over here, right? So I allow my hands to curve around my rib cage and then pull the skin upward. And then now I've cleared my intact quadrant up here, which is draining just fine. But now below my belly button, it's starting to, be the area where there's a compromise. So I'm going to now clear that. And so it's above the, it's from the groin. And this is what I was saying before, like, here is where, like, the lymph nodes are pretty much located. They're like right in the center of the groin, right? And then from here, the most direct path for the alternate route of drainage is such that it comes up in a diagonal. It's like it was just meant for the opposite hand to work, which is kind of cool, right? So from here, I'm on my lower quadrant now, and I'm gonna go up and up and up and up, right? And, you know, I always like to escort the fluid because, you know, this is like a new journey for all this lymph down here, right? So I like to escort the fluid all the way to its final destination in the armpit. I cleared this pathway, and now I'm going to allow all that fluid to not have the opportunity to be confused and bring it all the way up into the armpit. Now, I'm wearing a shirt, obviously, but you know, it's for the purpose of being modest for this demonstration. But in reality, at home, you'll be completely naked, right? So that you don't have anything that's interfering with your ability to stretch your skin.
Jeannette, how much pressure are you using with your hand in clearing?
That's a great question. Okay, allow me to show you. Okay, so, oh, well, first of all, this is all red. I made beats just before this demonstration. So you are going to basically put enough pressure so that you can actually have traction with your skin. So now this is a little bit overexposed. I think if I can do it like that, it might be easier to see, yeah. So you can see how like my skin is being manipulated, right? So we're not doing a Swedish massage where it's like totally getting into the musculature, right? All we want is enough pressure to move the skin. And that's why it's important for you to do just that, because if you do any more, you're going to get tired. Again, you won't be conserving energy. And you won't necessarily be doing drainage. You'll be doing like a Swedish massage, kind of a manual therapy. So what we want is just enough pressure to have traction. Now, that depends on lots of things, like as I said, for the upper extremity, you know, if your skin all over is super dry and your hands are super dry, then you need just a little bit of moisturizer, which I'm just gonna put here, because you'll see that by doing so, you will be able to get better traction. Because if your hands are so dry, you're just gonna be sliding and you won't have the grip with the skin that you need. So now with a little bit of lotion, with even less effort, it's just like it almost just has the perfect amount of traction. You'll then be able to move it even easier, right? So you definitely don't want to add too much lotion because the idea is not to glide. The idea is just to be enough in terms of moisture to grab the skin and then manipulate it like so. Right? And again, so if this was arm drainage, you would see it going up my arm, right? And at all times, you want to maximize the workload or the drainage, shall I say, by contouring your entire working hand over the entire limb. So even if my focus was like over here on this side of my arm, I'm going to let my entire hand rest here, right? So that my whole palm is working. So similarly over here, let's go back to our lower extremity drainage. You're going to basically have your entire hand working, just enough pressure to move the skin, and then go up. Okay, now remember that in this scenario, it's the case where only lymph nodes in this left groin was compromised, right? So the alternate route that we also have is across the abdomen, or really it's lower down. It's really just across the suprapubic region to the other side. So when you do that pathway, you're going to basically have your hand right in there. But again, you know what? Let me just kind of like settle myself down over here because I want it to be open. If I'm sitting like this, it's not open. So yeah, I'm just gonna lie down a little bit, and you want to have your hand right in the groin, and then you can work those lymph nodes and empty those. Now, these technically are also working just fine, right? So far, we really have focused mostly on lymph nodes that are working just fine and started to drain the area that's compromised, but we didn't, necessarily bring any more work into the compromised lymph node region, which is the left groin. So I'm just going to prepare this area, keeping my whole hand in there. And then, the suprapubic region is so short that basically you can just keep your whole hand here and then you get to the entire pathway, right? So you don't have to force your hand to be where you bring it to like 90 degrees and then develop carpal tunnel. It can simply be straight and then just work it over to the other side from left to right.
Hey, Jeanette, we have another quick question. If you
Yeah.
go across like that, is
Yeah.
there not a risk of developing labial edema?
No, because I mean, not with this drainage pathway. If anything, you're decreasing the risk, right? Because the risk for labial lymphedema would be on the left side only, right? And so by going across, you're bringing it from the entire left side, which includes the left leg, left lower quadrant, and left labia, and bringing it across. So no. So you bring it across from basically the left groin to the right groin, and then you've basically cleared a pathway across and up. And so now you can actually do the leg too. Now, if you had a family member available, you would actually ask them to kind of like help you out with the back too. You know, that's always kind of nice just to maximize the drainage pathways that are available to you, but not absolutely necessary. You'll still do an effective drainage if you do what I just demonstrated. Okay, so we did it across, we did it up, and so now we're gonna do the leg. Okay, so to do the leg, basically, you wanna make sure that basically we're not necessarily bringing more work into this area where lymph nodes were removed, right? We're gonna actually focus on bringing everything up to like the hip, and then it goes across, and then it goes up the side, right? So so you can basically get started on the thigh. Now, depending on how long your thigh is, I have super short legs. I have such short legs that, you know, like I'm 5'2", but my trunk is so long that it's so funny that when I sit at the dinner table, I'm actually towering my husband, who is like 5'7", 5'8". And every time we sit down at the dinner table, he's like, there's something so wrong here. But anyway, so my legs are super short, which is what I'm saying. So I'm just gonna start from like above my thigh, and I'm just gonna pull the skin up. You can work in an area for a little bit, especially if, you know, there's a little bit more fibrosis there, or, you know, you just wanna give a little bit extra love and attention. And then I start this hand, because I want to start to bring everything up the outside of my leg. I'm going to then start to, as I go into the next position, this hand will continue to stay like this as I go up my leg. But this hand, as I come up, will switch its angle so that I'm always bringing everything up towards like the hip. So it's like this. Now, I'm going over this like, you know, with relatively robust detail, but what I'd like you to take away from this is that we're just bringing the fluid up the legs. Don't make it much more complicated in your head than it is. My point here is that you can be totally comfortable, and if you just allow your hands to rest on your leg, you can basically do hardly any work. And if you have good moisture, so that you have good traction with your skin, there's hardly any work, because all you have to do is move the skin. How hard is it to move the skin, right? It's like nothing. Like it doesn't really take much effort. I want to do this like 2 more times without any talking, or maybe 3, just so that you can see. Oops, sorry about that. I was too busy focused on preparing what I was going to say next that I wasn't paying attention to my hands.
Hey, Jeanette,
Yeah.
somebody is asking, but in the case of primary lymphedema with intact lymph nodes, the path would be up the inside of the leg rather than along the outside?
Yeah, great question. Indeed, it would be a little bit different. So the quick answer to that is yes, but allow me to finish the demonstration so that there's no confusion, and then I'll demonstrate that separately. Okay, but the answer to that is yes. Okay, so I took care of my thigh. I already prepared the area across my pelvis and also up my side. So now I'm just gonna give some love to my knee, right? Especially the inner aspect of my knee. This is where there's like a bit of a bottleneck, and this is where you would see the lobule forming or more, lymph fluid accumulating. So I'm gonna just reposition my legs so that you can see a little bit better. And so you want to get to all aspects of the knee, right? So first, allowing your hand to totally just, mold to your knee over here. And you go up. Then in the back of the knee, you allow your hands to kind of like meet and even overlap. And then you go into the bend of your knee. So I want to show you here. I'm going to bend my knee a little bit so you can see. But basically, the lymph nodes are in there. So it's not going to be any effective if you don't have good contact with the area behind the knee. So you're going to have, a gentle, contact with the back of your knee. And it's almost like you're trying to lift up your knee like this. It's almost like you're trying to do this, but it's not that hard. It's not that much pressure. So I'm not going to do this anymore, but you can imagine that that's what I'm kind of doing in order to get to that area back there. And then of course you have the front of the knee. And you can just basically cover it like this and simply pull up. All right. So we did the knee, we did the thigh, we did across the pelvic region, and we did it up the side. And we also did the venous angle as well on the left, right? So now it's like the last portion is like usually the most congested portion. So I'm gonna bring this down a little bit, get this out of the way. Okay, so over here, the leg is a little bit longer than my thigh. So, and because this is like where you're gonna have like a lot of edema. So you can basically break this apart into like multiple components, right? Where you work over here first. And here you just go up, right? The whole thing, you just go up. So here, I'm gonna spend like 10 strokes right over here. And then I work my way down a little bit, right? Again, I'm working my way down, but I'm always stretching up in the direction of drainage. Don't get confused with that. Because sometimes what has happened, I would teach patients this sequence and they do pretty well at discharge. And then I see them in 6 months and then they're now doing this. They're pushing it down the leg. And they do that because they remember, I would say, go down the leg with your positioning, but the stretch of the skin is always up. So just make sure that that's ultra clear. Then the next part of my foot, the next part of my leg, a little closer to my ankle, just going up. As you can see, like I'm not adding any friction, right? I'm not sliding against the skin. I'm getting traction. I'm moving my skin relative to the deeper tissues, relative to the fat layers. You're definitely having an effect on the fat layers. But I'm only stretching up. Okay, then for the ankle, the ankle, this is one of the first parts that you'll start to like lose definition, like right behind the bones of your ankle. So it's always kind of nice to give a lot of love back there. And so you can do it where one hand is on the outside, one hand is on the inside. And you can just basically stay there for a little while, just basically, pulling the skin upward. And then while you're at it, as you can see, my thumbs are kind of hanging out here in the front of the ankle. So why waste that time and put them to work too, right? Just make the whole hand work. And if you want, you can also just get to this entire area a little bit more comprehensively. So you can do it like this. The other hand grips the back of the ankle. And that's just another way to get to this entire area here. And this is like probably one of the most gratifying parts of the self-manual lymphatic drainage, because it's almost like you're an artist and you're sculpting your body, and all of a sudden it's so exciting to see the ankle bone, you know, get definition. So it's really exciting, I think. Then the top of your foot. You only need one hand, right? And then there was a question the other day. I forgot to answer it. I want to say it was maybe yesterday or maybe when we were doing the toe bandaging. The question was, can you get lymphedema on the bottom of your foot? The simple answer is yes, absolutely. You can get lymphedema almost anywhere, right? Because there are lymphatic vessels there, and you do have drainage there that should be occurring there. However, you know, you do spend a good portion of your day on your feet, even if you're sitting, right? You have like the weight of your legs, like giving pressure to the bottom of your feet. Then you also have footwear that's giving it some compression. And then on top of that, the skin on the bottom of the feet are often quite hard and calloused, you know, just from the nature of friction and, you know, walking barefoot and stuff like that. So it doesn't manifest as clearly. You might feel it because it might feel boggy, or it might feel like every time you take a step, it's kind of like you're walking in water, but it's not going to be as obvious as it is with the top of the foot, where as it gets worse, you'll have like, you know, a mound of fluid, a protrusion. Okay, so now you're done with the top of the foot. And if you have toe swelling, especially for those of you who like don't compress the toes, you must at the very least give love to your toes with manual lymphatic drainage. And the first step in doing that is actually giving love to the areas between your toes. So you basically just kind of nestle your finger pads in there, and you just gently bring the fluid upward, because you want to give definition to this area. And this is kind of like, this is like an area where, like, for those of you who wear, like, let's say open toe garments, right? It's like, like I told you in the other, I think I said it just yesterday. It's like whenever you have an hourglass presentation, and here you have your big knuckles here. So if you're wearing an open toe garment, it's not going to hook here. And it's not going to hook here because it can't compete with all the fabric that's gripping the rest of your leg. It's going to ride up. So where does it go? It goes over here. So it's usually hanging around here in the midfoot. And then throughout the day, you feel like you just have to constantly pull it down, in which case I would say maybe consider a closed toe, or use a compression garment glue, and you put it all around here to the base of your toes and make sure it stays there. Otherwise, you are going to have to like basically struggle with that riding up all day long. Okay, but back to the MLD. Give a lot of love right over here. And then, depending on how swollen your toes are, if they're very swollen, then they need individualized attention. And what that means is, like, you totally encompass and surround the whole toe, and you give it love and you bring it up. But, I have this hand too, so I can do 2 toes at a time. You support the toe in the back. You work the skin on the front, or on the top, shall I say. And then, getting to all parts of the toe. So on the sides. And then you go to the next set of toes to give all toes attention, right? My toes are super long. They're like fingers almost. So I sometimes have to to demonstrate, I have to break it up, where I do the base of the toe first, and then the toe closer to the toenail. Get to all toes. And for those of you who might have joined me for the toe bandaging, I shared that I once broke my 5th toe on my right side. So I'm a little protective of the pinky toe, I guess some people call it. So you definitely want to give it some love. Now, if your toes are not so swollen, but a little bit swollen, you can basically, give it like group love, right? So taking care of all of the toes together, like so. You know, you can use the table here to basically support and give some counter pressure to the toes while you put some gentle pressure on the top. And then that's pretty much it. But you know, like I said, all this fluid is going to be taking a new route for drainage. So I'm going to assume that it's going to get confused. So it's always a good idea to make sure that you escort all this fluid to its final destinations, right? Because the two destinations are the left armpit, the left armpit and the right groin. So I'm going to follow my pathway all the way back up, giving a little love everywhere. And you know, another thing that I said the other day for the arm is that if you were to think about like your hands, like imagine that instead of dye here, I had paint. If you were to think about what my leg would look like, let's say I was painting with red paint. By the time I'm done with my leg, it should be completely that color of paint. It should be completely red, right? Like you'd see all my toes are totally red, my entire ankle's red, all around the back of my leg would be red. So just to highlight that you want to get to all parts of your leg, right? And then going up. And then as I go to the thigh, going back again to the outside. And then across the pelvis. And then up the side into the left armpit. And then its final destination, ultimate final destination, the venous angle on the left. Right? And so that's what it would look like. Now, a good session, I would say, you know, again, like you can use 5 to 7 repetitions as your guideline. Again, I like to round it to 10. But really a great session, I would say, is about 35 minutes, because 35 minutes is how long it takes for your parasympathetic nervous system to kick in. The parasympathetic nervous system is like that great system that you want to be working, right? It's the rest and digest system. It's the system that helps you to sleep. It's a system that helps you to digest and feel good and everything. And so when you're stressed out and you're all tense, it's the sympathetic nervous system that's, you know, working. And really, it can only be one or the other that can work at any given time. So 30 minutes is a great time frame. But like I said in the upper extremity demonstration, I'll take anything. If you can only do 10 minutes and you can only do 10 minutes during lunchtime, well, so be it. If you can only do 10 minutes, like as soon as you wake up, I'll take it. But if you can do 30 minutes, that's great. If you can only do it where it's, you know, 10 minutes broken up into 3 times a day, I'll take it, right? Anything will be better than nothing, that's for sure. But really to be effective, you know, you should get to all parts of the area like I showed you, with each section having been manipulated 5 to 7 times. Again, I'll round that up to 10. Okay, now back to the question of like, if let's say you had primary lymphedema, yes, you would basically, you know, you didn't have structural damage to your lymphatic system. You just might not have had enough pathways to really, you know, drain everything in your leg, let's say. So maybe you were born with fewer lymph nodes or insufficient lymph vessels. It's usually a condition of hypoplasia of the lymphatic system. Like there just isn't a robust amount. So in that case, yes, you would basically treat it like an intact lymphatic system. And the difference would be that you would have no hesitation bringing it right up into the left groin. So if it was your left leg that was involved, you do everything that I showed you before, all the knee, and you just basically go straight up and you can drain into that left lymphatic system. And then you just encourage it to continue up as it normally should. So then you do the abdomen, right? And then you go up the arm again, just to help with that alternate pathway. But again, you would basically not hesitate and bring it into that left groin. But again, you know, there are so many things to consider. You need to work with a lymphedema therapist, because who knows like what other things might be in your medical history, like medication, and who knows what other procedures you might have had done. And so you just have to work with your lymphedema therapist. But generally speaking, yes, that is an option under normal circumstances when you have primary lymphedema. Okay, so let's see, we're running a little short on time. Let's see what time we have. It's already 6 o'clock. Very, very briefly, the difference between what I just showed you versus if, like, let's say you had lymphedema in both legs, is that you don't have that alternate pathway across the pelvic region. Everything goes up. So basically everything that I showed you before is the same, except the pathway across. And you just do it on the right side and you do it on the left side. And again, this is assuming that you have no lymph node compromise in your armpits, right? So again, very quickly, let's say you have lymphedema in both legs and the lymphatic system in your arms are working just fine. So you still do the neck over here. You can now include the right neck. Honestly, you should be doing both sides of the neck anyway, no matter what. I was just kind of showing a slightly abbreviated version. Then you do the armpit like I showed you before. Now the thing is, you have a bit of a choice here. You can either take care of your entire left side first, and then your entire right, sorry, did I say left? One side first, your entire left side first, and then your entire right side. Or you can alternate as you go down. So in other words, this is what I mean. Like I did my left neck, then I did my right neck. Now I'm going to do my left armpit. Then I'm going to do my right armpit. Then I'm going to do my left upper quadrant. Then I'm going to do my right upper quadrant. Then I'm going to do my left lower quadrant. You know, whenever you have like 2 hands available, why not? It's a little bit less work. I'm going to bring it all the way up. And then same thing on this side. See, this is my working hand. So this is totally flat against my skin. This is just my supporting hand. So it's just trying to take a little bit of less work onto, I'm just trying to add a little bit less work onto the working hand by helping it out and pushing it along. But this doesn't have to be totally against, you know, the skin. And then you go up. Okay, and then you do the left thigh. I forgot. This way. Then you do the right thigh. Then you do the left knee. Then you do the right knee. Of course, I'm not doing the full 10 because, you know, you get the idea. It's just for demonstration. Then you do the left lower leg. Then you do the right lower leg. But, you know, simplistically speaking, everything is just going up into the armpits. Then you do the left ankle. Then you do the right ankle. Then you do the left foot. And at this point, you can just include the toes. Right? Again, all we're trying to do is move the skin. And then at this point, I'm just gonna go all the way up. Into my armpits. Then I go back and do my right ankle. Actually, I think I did my right ankle already, so it's time for my right foot. And then the right toes. And there's the toe that I broke, so it doesn't even touch the floor when I walk. And I do all the toes together. And then all the way back up. And then up the side and into my left armpit, excuse me, right armpit. And then you end with the neck. And of course, diaphragmatic breathing, right? You should be doing diaphragmatic breathing all day long, but most especially before and after manual lymphatic drainage. And also, I need to highlight the importance of hydration prior to doing manual lymphatic drainage, because you're moving all this fluid and protein. And if you don't have a medium by which you can move the protein, because if you're dehydrated and there's more protein than fluid, then it's not going to be as effective. So maintaining hydration is super important. All right, well, that's that. I hope it was helpful. Do we have any questions, Alyssa?
Jeanette, we have quite a few.
Oh, okay, ready.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay.
Okay, somebody says, I'm not able to reach my lower extremities due to obesity and have no one to help me. It was suggested to use a feather duster. How effective is that? And what motion would you use, if at all?
I would say not effective at all, because remember, the goal here is to move the skin relative to the deeper tissues. So that might feel nice. You might get a nice exfoliation out of it, but that's not manual lymphatic drainage. What I would say though, in those cases, I did have a patient who had lymphedema, and it was from venous etiology, and it was like so painful for him, but he also could not reach his lower legs, and that's where everything was affecting him. So he was only able to do what I had just shown you for bilateral lower extremity lymphedema, and he could only reach from his knees. So his manual lymphatic drainage was from his knees up into his armpits, but it was effective for him. It drained his lower legs. The whole body is connected. So if you get like the drainage going from the knees up, like the rest of the fluid will follow. It's kind of like I said with a slow bathtub. If you open the drain, the rest of the fluid will follow. So, be hopeful in that and try, and that's something to consider with your therapist.
Does the foot have to be supported by a chair or bed, or can your foot be on the floor?
It can be in the floor. It can be anywhere. Like I said, anything to get you to do it. So, I think that whenever you can basically get gravity out of the equation, so having the foot, having the leg and everything supported on some kind of surface, like doing it on your bed, or if let's say you're on your couch, putting your whole leg on your couch, or if you're sitting on your couch, putting your legs up on your ottoman, just taking gravity out of the picture will certainly help. But I would say that it's more important for you to be comfortable so that you can actually do it, because you manipulating your skin will be much more effective than just simply taking gravity out of the picture. It's not enough in most cases. So, whatever works.
And would you do self-MLD before or after compression pumps?
I think that's a personal thing. I think the main thing with that is to realize that, nothing replaces the other. So, it's up to you. But let's see about this. I would probably say, if I had to think in terms of the mechanics of things and the pathophysiology of things, I would probably say, and everybody can definitely experiment in conjunction, in collaboration with your lymphedema therapist, that technically speaking, if you do the manual lymphatic drainage first, you would have effectively moved all the protein molecules out of the way so that when you do the pneumatic compression, it will be a lot more effective in terms of just working on the fluid component. And so that would be my guess, is like if you did only pneumatic compression once a day and MLD once a day, that MLD preceding the pump would probably be more effective, is my guess. But honestly, I haven't really been asked that, but that's what I would venture to guess. Definitely work with your therapist to see what works better.
Okay. And then we have somebody saying that she has primary lower extremity lymphedema, which was confirmed by ICG imaging, indicating hypoplasia of the lymphatic system above both knees. Therefore, can MLD be done to help move the lymphatic fluid?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I mean, it might be a little bit slower of a system, but everything is interconnected and you can always try to redirect, and you never know like what pathways are available. So for example, in the head and neck, right, there is a watershed, which means that there's like a dividing line, this invisible dividing line from right to left. And typically you can only drain the right side of the neck down the right the right side of the face and head and neck down into the right venous angle, and the left side down the left side of the neck and into the left venous angle. But there are some cases where, for example, they have patients might have like, surgery on both sides. So there's scar tissue here, and then they also have scar tissue like across the neck. And then on top of that, there's radiation fibrosis like all across the neck. So like, how else are you going to get the drainage? Like, let's say it's like the one side. I mean, we're going to try to bring it across, and you just don't know. So we'll take whatever open pathways there are, and we'll see how it works, so, just keep, a lot of lymphedema therapy, I would like to say, is trial and error. Like especially with garments, right? It's like you just have to try like different brands, different compression, different fabrics. But sometimes in more complicated cases of lymphedema presentations, depending on the scar tissue and what else is like a potential barrier, like let's say you have a peg or a pedge or an ostomy or anything like that, we'll have to like work around that. But again, your lymphedema therapist will help you to navigate and develop the effective manual lymphatic drainage sequence for you. So, but definitely it's an option worth exploring. It's a staple of lymphedema therapy.
Definitely. Okay, now if you have had a total hip replacement with a large cut across your outer hip, how do you recommend moving the fluid up around this cut?
Now, is this in the setting of lymphedema? If it's in the setting of lymphedema, or is this just like regular orthopedic swelling that we're doing manual lymphatic drainage for? In which case you can just like do it into like that regional lymph nodes, right? But in general, whenever you have scar tissue that's kind of like in the way, the first thing is to address the scar tissue. Like work with your therapist would have already like kind of done that, but scar tissue management, scar tissue techniques, kinesiotaping, friction massage. Sometimes there's like different types of modalities like phototherapy to kind of like really break up that scar tissue. That would be the first thing, because then if you do that, it's like, again, opening up the drain. If you get rid of the thing, the dam that's preventing the water from flowing, if you just break down the dam, the rest of the rest of the water will just flow.
And yes, she confirmed that her lymphedema is from her total hip replacement.
Oh, well, I mean, well,
or it occurred after.
Right. Like there was a hip replacement and there was also lymphedema. So yeah, just managing the scar tissue is going to be important, and your therapist can definitely help with that.
Okay. And let's see, how much reduction in lymphedema can be produced by manual massage?
The thing, what I'll say to that is that, you know, just like any other component of lymphedema therapy, nothing works in isolation. It's a team effort. It's a team effort from manual lymphatic drainage and compression bandaging and compression garments and exercise and skincare. So you can't really tease out any one component and give any one component any more credit than the other.
Okay. Now, if most of the lymph vessels are on the inside of the leg, the demonstration moves the fluid up the outside. Can you explain?
Well, yes, because that's where like everything is backing up. So we want to redirect traffic. We're gonna like now tell like those cars on the highway, hey, go ahead, break the rules, go into the field, and then go up this way. Just, you know, so we're rerouting everything.
Okay.
One more, and then we got to give Tuan some love.
When it comes to complete lymphatic drainage therapy, MLD, massage, and limb wrapping should always be combined for complete treatment.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Okay, so it is now my pleasure to welcome one of our silver sponsors, Tuan. And coming on to the stage right now is Ryan Hansen, who is the lead for Tuan. So Ryan, please do join us. Thank you so much for your sponsorship support. We're so grateful. And please give him some of your time and attention because they have some products that might prove to be helpful. Again, our disclaimer is such that even though we're giving this opportunity for you to connect with Tuan and with Ryan Hansen, the National Lymphedema Network does not necessarily endorse any of the products that you're about to be introduced to. So Ryan, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. First of all, can you see my screen? Can one of you just...
Yes, we can see your screen just fine, but we don't see you.
No, I'm gonna
hidden
the video.
Gotcha.
Close it down while I'm simultaneously using PowerPoint and yeah.
Gotcha.
So again, thank you very much. I will keep this pretty short and concise. You know, Tuan as a company has a lot of lymphedema solutions for therapists and patients alike to kind of have another tool in their toolbox. And you know, as you saw today, self-management is a big part of you know, an ongoing regime of care with lymphatic patients, and a proper garment is a pretty important aspect of that as well. So while you just watched a very interesting demonstration on self-lymphatic massage, it's also very important for lots of patients to have a reliable and affordable garment for the nighttime. And so that's what I'm going to focus on here. Please feel free to reach out to me with any other questions you may have. We as a company have more products than what I'll show here, but I'd like to keep this fairly brief and concise. So just a little bit about us. We are a French company. We're 174 years old and family owned, about 2,500 employees around the globe, and we operate in most major markets throughout the world. However, we, with our compression and lymphedema products, are new to the USA. So I understand a lot of you are hearing about us for the first time in this setting, and so I want to just present you with a new garment option that is available on the market. I see a couple people in the chat box have joined us from Europe, the Netherlands. There's somebody, I think, from Australia that was on the presentation as well. You may be familiar with these garments as they've been in your markets for quite a while now. So this might be a little bit more of a new experience for patients here in the US, but nevertheless, here we go. So our products are called Mobiderm, and Mobiderm is the name of the actual foam block technology that we use. So it stands for mobilizing the dermis. And this was a concept that was conceived and invented in France in the form of bandaging for the reduction phase about 15 years ago. And then it was transferred over to garments 10 years ago. And how it works is a lot of foam products and foam garments that are on the market now rely on essentially a technical philosophy of complete and total randomization of the foam. So that is to say that you take multiple different densities of foam and chop them up into random shapes and sizes, and that's what is used as the fill for the garment. In the Mobiderm technology, we essentially use the exact opposite approach to that, in that if you look on this bandage roll here, you'll notice that not a single cube is laying flat like the image on the left. Each and every cube is placed on its axis. And we do that for two key reasons. Anytime that you're using foam, incorporating foam into a garment or a mobilizing bandage, you have two key objectives. Number one is to, of course, break up the fibrotic tissue, and two is to stimulate the movement of that lymphatic fluid. And the Mobiderm system is so effective because of that precise positioning of the foam blocks, like this image on the right. And the way that it does that is, one, it does a better job at breaking up fibrotic tissue because it has all of its edges pointing outward and coming into the contact with the surface of the skin. And secondly, even though geometrically these two shapes here are the same, they're the same geometric shape in that they're a cube, by turning it on its axis, you actually create a higher number of high and low pressure points, which we know is key in moving lymphatic fluid, as lymphatic fluid naturally seeks out that lowest possible pressure point. So the way that they are laid inside of the garment is really kind of the secret to the sauce, and why Mobiderm is so effective at achieving those two objectives. So now for just a quick overview, I'll play a 2-minute video here showing you how this is incorporated into our garments. And what's really interesting for you at the patient level here in the United States with our garments that are really differentiated from other things that are on the market, is that these garments are off the shelf. So they are off the shelf and adjustable, which for you as a patient, really provides two key benefits. Number one, unfortunately, as you all know far too well, the reimbursement landscape in the United States for these types of products are not very favorable. It can be quite difficult to get these garments covered, and that's really only with certain private insurances. So cost is always a big concern. And by having these garments be off the shelf instead of made to measure, we've been able to greatly reduce the price point. So that's number one. And number two, as you notice, there's the series of Velcro tabs here that make this garment adjustable. And this is really critical in terms of how long you're able to keep the garment versus a made to measure, in which you might need to swap out more frequently, because as you have a tubular garment, meaning one that's not adjustable and it's made to measure, it's made based on that initial set of measurements. So if you have a reduction over time, which in theory you should, the garment, that made to measure garment, no longer offers any compression, where this garment allows you to essentially, the garment can reduce with you. So you're able to actually stay in the garment for a longer period of time. So not only is it a lower price point to begin with, it also is something that can remain with you for a longer period of time. It is available in an arm sleeve with an attached gauntlet. And it also is available as a below knee or a half leg or an AD, whatever you refer to that as, and also as a full leg or thigh high garment. And I think that image is coming up here shortly. So there's the arm sleeve with the gauntlet, a full leg, and a below knee. And then one final thing to show you. Within the Mobiderm family, we actually have 3 different product categories. So it is available as a made to measure, but that's not what I focus on here, particularly in the United States. The Auto Fit, which is what you just saw. So that's your Velcro adjustable foam night garment off the shelf. And we also have this standard range, which is, you know, a little bit more on the arm sleeve. It's a little bit more of a lower price point. However, you have that same issue of, as you reduce this garment, because it's tubular, will no longer offer much compression. However, one of the very interesting products that we have is this standard size glove. So off the shelf, that which, you know, is an off the shelf price. Which has the Mobiderm foam blocks built right into it. And this has been a very popular choice for a lot of people with hand and finger edema because it eliminates the need to self-bandage fingers and hand, which we all know is very complicated and time-consuming. So again, 2 key benefits for you, the patient, as most of these garments do tend to be out-of-pocket purchases. We come in at 1/3 the price of a similar custom-made garment, or even less. And you're allowed to, or not allowed, but you are able to keep your garment longer. As you reduce, the garment can be adjusted to accommodate your change in anatomy. And conversely, that works the opposite way as well. If you do have a swelling incident and you have to back off the compression level a bit, you're able to open this up and make the garment a little bit larger than where you'd normally, than how you'd normally don it. So there is some adjustability there that really allows for, you know, changes in anatomy. So just some quick key benefits is the tightening notches. It's very easy to don and doff. The lower extremity garments come with anti-slip sole as a standard product feature. And as they are semi-open, meaning they are held together by this piece of cloth here, it's not like a Velcro compression wrap where the straps are kind of open and flopping all over. This is very, very easy to don and doff. And for the lower extremities, they're bilateral, meaning you don't have to discern between, you know, left or right specific. They can be used on either. There are 4 lengths and 6 sizes. So for an off-the-shelf product, you're still able to capture a really you know, wide number of patients, sizes, and this is able to accommodate almost everyone. Of course, some cases are just, you know, no garment is perfect for every patient. And, you know, sometimes made to measure is really what's needed, and that's what has to be called in. But for an off-the-shelf, the sizing chart is pretty expansive. This is the same thing with the arm. I won't go too much into this. The arm sleeve does have the attached mitten, which can be rolled back to for your daily activities, such as using the restroom. If you're wearing it for rest rather than at night, you know, cooking or writing an email, something like that, that hand can be rolled back. And then where to find our products, all of the usual suspects that you, I would expect you probably all know. So I can open it up to questions if anybody has one.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, we have a couple of questions as it relates to availability. So we have some people from Canada and we have some friends from the Caribbean. Can they get their hands on Mobiderm?
Yes, absolutely. And here, let me just put into the chat. Where was the chat box? I will put my email in there for Canada. So I'm responsible for all of the Americas. So I am responsible for Canada and the Caribbean. And I can point you in the right direction for those areas. Can they be washed? Yes, machine wash. We do recommend hand drying though. And our machine dry version is set to be launched in 2022.
Thank you. And then another question is about size. So Kim asked, for patients who have elephantiasis, do you offer a size that's large enough to handle such volume?
So I would have to look at our exact, I would have to pull up the size chart. It does go pretty large for that specifically. That, I mean, that might be a situation where, you know, you do have to admit that not every garment can fit every patient. So I would have to actually take a look at the measurements to find out. And I don't have the size chart right in front of me.
Thank you. Just a quick comment to that. To that, I would say, you know, if you have elephantiasis, it would be suggestive that you did not necessarily go through intensive therapy or acute therapy yet, because under normal circumstances, in most cases, after having gone through therapy, you would no longer necessarily have elephantiasis. Now, an important distinction is that elephantiasis is the defining way to describe stage 3 lymphedema. Stage 3 lymphedema is the latest stage, and it does not always mean that the volume is so large. It just means that there are tissue changes, and just wanted to make that distinction. But again, if you are in stage 3, it suggested that you didn't go through therapy yet, because at the very least you can at least get to a stage 2 where you no longer have those fibrotic changes or those skin changes. So that's something to consider. So a lot of the products that our sponsors offer are not meant to replace. Actually, all of them are not meant to replace therapy. It's to help be an adjunct to therapy, and maybe make it easier for you to manage, like, let's say on the weekends, and just to fill in the gaps, the clinical gaps a little bit. But again, all the products do not replace therapy. So that's just a quick comment there. Okay, let's see if there are any more questions. We have 2 questions here. What is the price range for the lower extremity? Ballpark, off the shelf.
$430 for a below knee, $525 for a full leg.
Thank you. And I think that's pretty much it for questions for you. But do you have any concluding thoughts, Ryan?
No, thank you very much for your time. And again, I hope everyone is having a fruitful and informative Lymphedema Awareness Month, and thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you. Well, I understand that you are generously going to have a giveaway for our audience in attendance tonight.
Yeah, we will be providing, I don't know how you want to do the drawing, Jeannette, but I'd be very pleased to offer our winner, however you want to choose to do that, a Mobiderm glove.
Thank you. So if you are interested in receiving a Mobiderm glove, please raise your hands. And then Ryan, I'm going to ask that you go to the participants, and you go to the attendee side. And then you're going to scroll all the way to the top to see all the raised hands. And then I'm going to ask that you randomly pick a name. You just have to see the little hand next to the name. Otherwise, it means that they didn't necessarily want to enter the drawing.
Karen Adams.
Karen Adams. Let's just make sure that she has her hand raised, because okay, she does. Excellent. Karen Adams, thank you so much for joining our webinar today and winning this giveaway from Tuan. Ryan Hansen, thank you so much for your time and for your sponsorship support. And we're so grateful. And, I hope everyone who stayed to the very end learned a lot from today's webinar. And good night. We're 4 minutes over. We've been running over because, really, we could talk lymph all day, every day, and there's just so much to talk about, and you never get bored of it. At least I don't. So anyway, thanks to everyone, and good night.